React Native developers. This UI style, relying on monochromatic color schemes, low contrast, and subtle shadows, is named Neumorphism. These effects, which should be used sparingly in your apps, can easily be built using React Native Skia. I'm William, recording from beautiful Zurich, Switzerland, and in this video I would like to show you two things. First, the components part of React Native Skia that can be used to implement neumorphism designs. And since these designs often start in a Figma file, I would like to show you some of the workflows to easily go from a Figma design to React Native Skia. This is one of our design goals. We have great graphic designers, we have great React Native developers, and we want them to speak the same language. And we're pretty excited about some of the feature parity we have between Figma and React Native Skia. Let's jump right into it. The neumorphism.io website shows nicely the base concept. We draw a shape, and we can add a light shadow and a dark shadow. And now we can add a gradation to the shape to add an extra sense of depth. Alternatively, the same shadow can be drawn inward to create a sense of carving. Here I downloaded two neumorphic UI kits into Figma, and I want to show you three small examples from this. So we can implement this little button, the switch component here, and maybe here this nice progress bar. And we can animate all of these components. Let's have a look at this little button. So we have the border, which has two drop shadows, a light one and a dark one. And then we have the container, which has two inner shadows, which can create some sense of depth and carving. So you see here, would be like the press state and the non-pressed state. And we can animate it in React Native Skia. So in VS Code, I can create my button component. So I have an empty file, I think, here for the button. And we can draw the rounded rectangles. So the first thing I want to do, so here I pasted the values from, so I have the border, which is 0, 0, 24, 24. So I wrote it here. The radius is 5. So we have it here. So I copied the values, same for container. And one thing we can do is to scale automatically these components. So I can have, let's say, a group, and I have a rounded rectangle. So the rectangle is here, let's say, border. Let's put a strong color first. Let me import group. Maybe we have green for the container. All right, so we see it here, but it's like super small. And so that's one thing, again, talking about the workflows going from Figma to React Native Skia. So here I have a size for my Canva and the X and Y value, which I can pass here quickly as properties. Bear with me 1 second. So we have size X, Y. I put it here. And size also. So X, Y, size. And now I have a component called feedbox. I can pass the source rectangle, which we know here is this one. So 0 and 24 width, 24 height. So I can call it the source. And I can give the destination rectangle, which we have here. And this will scale the drawing automatically. So it's a super convenient way and fast way to automatically copy-paste the values from Figma and then have it scale it nicely into your design. So X, Y, width is size, height is size. It disappeared because I didn't save here. Yeah, perfect. Okay, looking good. Now I can switch the colors, maybe quickly. So now it's going to disappear because the contrast is so low, which is a property of neumorphism. I'm not even sure how it's gonna look like on video, but so now we don't see anything anymore. And let's add the shadows. Let's try to see something, right? So I'm gonna put a group for each component so we can assign a paint to it. And we can have, so we know here we have some drop shadows, so we have a shadow component. And I can copy maybe some of the parameters. So if I go in borders, -1, 3, and white. So dx equals -1, dy equals -1, blur is 3, and color is white. Now we have the darker shadow, which I guess is going to be on opposite side, so 1, 1, 3, and the color. This is the color, 40%. So RGBA, 174, 174, 192, 40%. Okay, we see it. It's super light, but we see it. I see it. I'm not sure if you're going to see it on video. And so we know also that for the container, we have the inner shadows. And it's a bit lighter. It's the same, but yeah, slightly the same, but a bit lighter. So let me copy paste. And we know these are inner shadows, so we can use the inner property here. And we can make it maybe a bit lighter. So RGBA, so white, 70%. And here I think it's 1.5. Is it 1.5 also for this one? No. And here, I mean, yeah. So I am not seeing it. I think, yeah, I forgot to put the paint component. So I might talk about it later. We're gonna improve the, you see the way how you have to do a group here every time and the paint. This is gonna be much better in an upcoming version. That's one of the key learning we've made while building these examples. So now we see it nicely. Yeah, okay, so let's talk about it. So these shadows are image filters. So the drop shadow is a very fast, we just do a blur on the rasterized image plus some transformation, very fast image filter. The inner shadows relies on blurring, making a mask and blurring this mask. This is slow, especially on the low-end devices. On feature phones, how do you call it? Flagship phones, it's incredibly fast, of course. But on low-end devices, it's extremely slow, and you're not gonna, if you were to implement a complex UI using a lot of these inner shadows, it's gonna be too slow, I think. And so that's interesting because if we look at these Figma designs, they all rely on rounded rectangles, right? Circles, which are also rounded rectangles. And so same here, I think. And when we got started implementing shadows in React Native Skia, we knew in CSS we had box shadows, text shadows, we have the shadow filters, and we were unsure why there were all these different semantics, and we had to learn it the hard way by implementing a inner shadow image filter and realizing that it might be quite slow on some devices. So these shadows here work on anything, text, path, you name it. But we've implemented a box shadow, exactly like in CSS, which works only on rounded rectangle, but that is much, much faster. And you can apply it also for drop shadows, but here the level of performance is going to be on the same level. And so it was fun that, looking at these semantics from CSS, not understanding why there were these different semantics, and then relearning it from scratch by yourself, and to end up with a completely symmetrical solution. And one of the fun things with Skia is that since it's used, for instance, in Google Chrome, we could just look at the Blink implementation, so the renderer of Chrome, and to see how, for instance, the box shadow was implemented. They use a nice trick to build these inner shadows. So they build the inner shadows only by rasterizing the input image, so which is quite fast, by blurring the rasterized input image. And so that's how we found the trick. That's how we implemented it. So it's nice that we can look at other projects and just import the recipe into React Native Skia. But I'm disgracing here. So let's switch to a faster shadows. So for drop shadows, it doesn't really matter, but for consistency, we are going to use also box shadows. So we're going to create a box, and we can pass these shadows as children, but these becomes box shadows. And the shadows, the box takes a rounded rectangle as property. We call it box. So color here is the same. And should be looking good. And we can do the same for this one. So it's a box for the inner shadows. Children. We pass box shadow. So so it looks the same, right? I think it looks good. And one thing we can do is to add the children here. So we have a nice SVG path again. So to have a sense of the workflows going from Figma to React Native Skia. So here I can do copy as SVG. We're going to paste it as a child. So we have this nice SVG. We have the width and the height of the path. So I'm going to do a group to scale the path. But so I was blabbing about these box shadows, implementations, and so on. But this is really part of the fun that with this React Native Skia project is that we get to learn all these things. And I don't know, the fun value is completely out of control. So we have width, height. So we know that the button is 24 width, 24 height, and we want to center it quickly. So translate X. So width is 9, so 24 minus 9 is 15, divided by 2 would be 7.5, and translate Y would be 24 minus 12 divided by 2 is 6. So path here, I can just rename the D property to path. And let me do the imports. Stroke, so is now color. And we need to set style equals stroke. Line cap, so it's called stroke cap, round. Stroke join, round. And we can add a stroke width of 1. So here is complaining about the length. We now have a children, which we can put here. Up, children. Let's have a look. Looking good. Now we can animate it. So here I already have a touch handler with a pressed animation values that goes. So let me actually change it. So when we start, we press, we go to 1. When we end, on end, we animate to 0. And let me pass this value to the button component. So we have button, which now gets a pressed. So it's a Skia read-only value. So Skia values are like animation values, right? States of your drawing, which are independent from the React renderer. So just like animation values. So we have it here. and what we want to do is the inner shadows to disable them when the button is not pressed. So we're going to interpolate these two colors. So we are going to use derived value. So use derived value. We need to pass the dependency. So here it's a pressed. So we want this to be evaluated every time the pressed skia value change. And yeah, let's just do it. Up. So we mix. So on pressed.current, that goes. So you see in reanimated, it's called dot value. And for a shared value, here it's called dot current. Because we always add value dot value, so we thought current was semantically maybe a tiny bit better. So yeah, so it's called dot current and 007. So that would be C1 here, and we can do C2 quickly. So it's complaining. Why is it complaining? Pressed. Let me do C2. And we go to 02. Here I have something. Oh no, that was correct. Okay. And we can pass C2. So we don't pass proper. So it seems like so pressed is passed as property. Let me reload maybe. All right, so it looks good. Fun. The last thing it's cool. The last thing is, of course, maybe to scale the children, because now it doesn't move, so it actually remove this sense of depth. So we can just add a scale here. So transform is going to become a derived value. So dependency is pressed. We return the transform, and we can add a scale, which is a mix on pressed dot current, and we go from 1 to 95%, maybe. Let me import mix. Yeah, now it looks actually pretty realistic, pretty nice. And the second example would be this switch button. So let me remove button here. And I actually have an empty switch component. So here it's a bit the same story, right? So we have the X and Y value. We're going to use the feed box. So X, we are going to get the pressed eventually to animate it. So skia read-only value of number. So let me just do it quickly. Size, pressed. Here we have the border container and also the dot. So we have all the values, which are copy-pasted exactly from Figma, so we don't have to come up with our own values. So we have feed box. And we're going to do a box. So one is the border. One is the container. One is the dot. So the source, we have it. This is the source. Destination is the same. Then for the button, so X, Y, size. Now we can add some colors. So Here we're going to use two different colors. So theme white 1. Theme white 2. And let me save this file. That looks good. It's just the contrast is so low, and the box, of course, needs its own color as well. So maybe I will use a white one for the... So now we don't see anything. I mean, I see something, but let's add some shadows. Why not copy paste the shadows from this, from the button, sorry. Yes. Same for the inner shadows, except, okay, we don't animate them. So if I switch back here, so here is going to be white 70%. Let me do it quickly here. And here it's the same, but 20% opacity. Yes, pretty nice. And let's add some drop shadows to the dot. And let me just copy paste again. Yeah, come on. I mean, I'm not sure how well you're gonna see it on video, but to me right now, this looks pretty cool. Looks pretty realistic, actually. So let's animate it now. Oh. So this one we don't need anymore. And on end, so I'm going to remove on start, and on end we're just going to go to the opposite value. So if it equals 1, we go to 0, if not 1. Okay. Now let's use it to interpolate, so to transform this dot here, to translate it, right? So we can create transform, which is going to be a use derived value. Let's do it here. So transform equals use derived value. The dependency is pressed. And we do a translate x, which we mix on press.current. And we go from 0 to 24 probably. So it animates nicely. And now one thing we can do, so I should do it here, do a little circle. Here? No. Okay. So Cx is so that would be 9, right? The middle. Yeah. So Cx9, Cy9, we can add, I don't know. Let's take a color from the Figma file. This one. Good. And white top left. Plus, so is it 12 plus the radius, or no? Sorry, 12. Okay. And so maybe we could just have the radius here animated from 0 to 2. So again, use derived value, we mix, yeah, and we go from 0 to 2. Let's have a look. So here's a... Yeah, I think we could even improve it by adding opacity equals pressed, I think. Doesn't change much, but fun example. So now let's have a look at the last example, which relies on, it's more a dark neumorphism theme. So in this example here, we have the progress bar component, which just shows the text with the value. So we have already all the animation values. But one thing we want to do is to draw this neumorphic button. So we have two circles. And so, yeah, we're going to use boxes. Let me see what are the values for these two boxes. So this one, the outer one, is 85 radius. So I think I have it here. Let me see, because here I have a function to give me from a center and the radius to give me the rounded rectangle that forms a circle. So let me try something. So if I do from circle, so we have x, y, 12. So that would be 12 plus, so we have the radius here, R1, 12 plus R1, and the radius is R1. Let me put some colors to see. Okay, all right, that's good. And maybe to do quickly the inner one, which would be, so 37, 37, and approximately 60. So 37, 37, and maybe I can create R2. Which is 60. Okay, so now let's draw our shadows. So this one relies on a linear gradient. Again, here the contrasts are so low that I'm not sure we're gonna see any difference, but for good measure, let's do it. So I remove the color red. I'm gonna do a group to assign a paint with the linear gradient. Again, in upcoming version of React Native Skia, this is gonna be the usability and the way you have to build this component is going to be dramatically improved, and it's going to make, I think, much more sense. And there are historical reasons why things are like this right now. So basically, when we got started with React Native Skia, we were keeping the Skia API super close to the vest, as we should, to not take any risk, to not try to reinvent the wheel and end up with something that is broken. So we knew for safety reasons we needed to stick to the React Native Skia, to the Skia API as close as possible. And then before the release, when we made the public announcement, we added some capabilities to make things a bit easier. So we don't have to create a ref for a paint always and pass it as parameters and so on. But now that we're building more complex example with React Native Skia, we have a better picture of how things should be. And we're pretty excited about how the usability of these things is gonna improve in the very short term. There's some other stuff we're quite excited about. I'm gonna mention it later, but let's finish this example. So colors. Let's put the colors. So we have one color. Two color, three colors. And one thing I really want you to take away from this video is that you see I'm quite comfortable going from Figma to React Native Skia, and I hope that's something you will find as well, that it's quite comfortable now to implement these designs in React Native. So the colors are okay. I need a start value, which I'm gonna do at 12. So X is 12, Y is 12. And the end, yeah, I'm gonna do at 12 plus R1, 12 plus R1. Yeah, looks good. Again, I'm not sure how much you're seeing in terms of contrast, but looks good to me. And what is the shadow situation here? So 2 drop shadows, a dark one and a lighter one. Let's do it. So box shadows, so minus 20, approximately. I think I saw 60 approximately. And some sort of, no, this is the lighter one, okay. And then I think was same opposite. The blur I saw was bigger and I guess the color is darker. The colors here are wrong. Yeah, looks good. Now we can do the inner one. So the color here is a static color. And we have 2 inner shadows. So the blur values are big. I mean, let's see, the bigger the blur values, the slower it's gonna be, right? So black 2055. And 50. Doesn't look too bad in terms of values. And just so 68, 81, 50%. So I think I got it wrong here. RGBA. Okay. So that looks pretty good, but again, here we use an expensive operation, a really expensive blur. And the contrast is so low, you can barely notice it. So now maybe let's add the progress bar. We have the path as a circle already. So we draw a circle for the progress bar, but we wanted to have it as a path because we want to be able to trim according to the progress. So this is why we use path, add circle. Let's draw it. So we have a path. And I know already, yeah, I'm going to need to put it into a group. So we can assign a paint to it, but path equals, is it called path or circle? Path, okay. So style is stroke with maybe 15. Color red, I don't know. And we can assign to the end property the progress skia value. Okay, nice. And one thing we can do is to add a stroke cap of round. Looking good. Now we can add a gradient and we can add a sweep gradient. So the center, we have it here, I think. So that would, yeah, I mean, we have it here, okay. The colors we have also already. Let me import it. And reload probably. Oh no, remove the color red here, sorry. Yeah, okay, so perfect. And now you see the cap is of the color, of the ending color, so we can just add a small circle with the starting color. So color is colors 0. And the center would be C. So radius is R1. So that would be, so it's going to be stroke width divided by 2, so it's going to be 7.5. Cx is going to be, I think it's going to be 12 plus 2 times R1. Yes, and y is going to be 12 plus R1. Cy is going to be 12 plus R1. Oops. Yeah, looking good. So here it seems to be working nicely. And I even implemented here a nice backdrop filter based on the previous tutorial, so same component. And so this is a fun UI. Now in React Native Skia, these drawings are executed on a dedicated thread. So we don't rely on the JavaScript thread to execute these drawings, which is pretty nice. But one thing we still are doing is that you see here, we have the Skia value that animates the drawing. And so even though the drawing tree didn't change, only the Skia value have changed, we still on every frame send all the drawing commands to the native dedicated thread. And this is a redundancy that we're going to remove in the short term, because why would we send every time the tree if it's always identical? So this is going to be a nice performance improvement that we're going to bring in the short term. And as I mentioned, so you see how every time here we were doing a group and a paint to assign to the to a drawing, and we have also this strange semantic where the paint affects all of its siblings. So if you create a paint, anyways, and I remember that when we did the public announcement, the first time this paint semantic was shown, people had comments immediately. So we're also pretty excited in the short term to bring some nice usability improvements regarding this. We think you're going to be quite pleased. I hope you enjoyed this example. Now, if everything goes according to plan, the next video should be quite special. So I am looking forward to talk to you soon. And until next time, happy hacking.